Getting here. Okay, now let me put this over here. Hey, everybody. I apologize for the terrible camera. We are in a position where we had to move because my other camera broke. So we're using the one that's on the computer here. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. So today I thought we would talk about C-PTSD and the related topics, and specifically brain fog. Hello, Amanda, Jan, Jack Lumen. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thanks for coming on over. Mystique, Stephanie, Jeffrey, changing my life. Hope everybody. All right. So let's talk about, yes, I'm okay. Sorry about that, Chrissy. There was a situation where my computer just kind of, or my camera. So now I just put my laptop camera on, and now I'll probably keep accidentally looking at the other one. But here we are. I'll be getting a new one. Yeah, brain fog. Yes, interestingly enough. All right. So if you have experienced narcissistic abuse in toxic relationships, chances are you have also experienced some brain fog. So we're going to talk about it. If you have experienced brain fog, let me know in the chat here or in the comments later. So one of the things that I think is incredibly important to remember, first of all, let me just define brain fog for you, okay? It is this feeling of sort of dissociation where you kind of feel disconnected. You feel like you're not really there, or you're kind of watching from a bubble, or you can't just think clearly. And this is something that a lot of us go through in toxic relationships, right? And during recovery, we feel kind of lost. We feel like we're confused. We can't remember stuff. We feel exhausted all the time. Let's talk about some of the symptoms in addition to feeling exhausted. So you might feel like you're stiff, or you can't move a lot. You feel sluggish. You might feel like your joints hurt, your body aches. You might just literally feel like your head is in a fog, right? You might feel like I'm not really depressed, but I'm not really happy. I don't really feel anything. I feel kind of numb. Maybe your house is a mess. Maybe you can't function the way you used to, or function at all. Maybe you're not showering as much as you want to shower if you're going through this, or you're just not functioning. You almost feel like you can't get up and go or do what you need to do or what you want to do, right? Does any of that ring true for you guys? Let me just go ahead and scroll on up to the chat. Let's just get right into it. I saw a comment I wanted to touch on. So we're all scrolling and up. Here we go. All right. Carol says yes. Hey, and Nicole, Angelina, how are you? Stephanie says she's going through it now. Hello, Ellen. Welcome back. Lorian says, hey, Lorian, it's good to see you. Oh, I keep looking at the wrong camera. Darn it. Can brain fog cause you to temporarily forget that you have or that you know certain skills? Absolutely. I mean, at least it could cause you to forget sort of how to do things, or that you have always done, even. Or even, say like every morning you wake up and make a cup of coffee. I don't know anybody who does that. But maybe one morning you forget, where the coffee is, or you get out, instead of, like I switched to Keurig a couple of years ago, and maybe one morning I would wake up and pull out the old coffee pot. That's not even a really good example, but yes, certain skills for sure. Give me some more details on that, Lorian. Naz says, I've been having brain fog, especially over this weekend. Yeah, Stephanie says, stuck on duh. Dynamite says, different pains in the head. Sure, you can definitely get some headaches from that stuff. Definitely. Chrissy says, it was like I was not living in the real world. Yes. And that is a very common feeling. I used to feel like I wasn't a real person. I still, if I have those moments where I go through it, I'll still feel the same way. Now, Aurora says she has it all the time and is quite embarrassed of it. And I think that's something that, I understand why you feel embarrassed, especially when you're dealing with people who don't get it. But I also understand that it's something that anyone who's gone through this would understand. Anyone who's had any kind of like major trauma can totally get that, right? So I don't want you to be embarrassed of it. It's not something that you have control over per se, but you certainly can do things to sort of overcome it. I have found mindfulness to be especially powerful in that way. Now, anyone in the chat right now who has thoughts or ideas on how it worked, how did you get through it? How did you get past it? Please share them in the chat or in the comments below, because I want to share as many possible answers as I can so that you guys can sort of, be as informed as possible. All right. Oh, Stephanie says 33 years of it. Now that's the thing. A lot of times when Dynamite Dill says chores are hard, and that is the truth. Okay. That is one of those things I personally struggled with quite a lot. Still have my moments of it. And I used to think it was more related to the fact that I was dealing with, certain cleaning traumas from growing up with a clean freak who walked around with a literal white glove at times, and getting in a lot of trouble for not doing things exactly right. And I think that's part of it, but I also think it's the brain fog of it all, or the C-PTSD of it all. And I see a lot of people talking about, struggling with messy houses and stuff like that, which is why I've done like the free 30-day, declutter challenge, for example. There's a lot of different ways you can go about that. But what it comes down to, what I have found, between ADHD and C-PTSD, it's ridiculous. But what I have found to be especially helpful is to just everything in its place, right? So if you can find a place for a thing, then you always put it back in that place, then it helps. But of course, that's easier said than done in the long run in so many different ways. But we'll get to that. All right. Yeah, sleep is helpful. Of course. Hello, Jillian. I'm so glad you stopped by. But it's definitely a thing that we all struggle with. I found myself struggling to sleep at all during the most difficult parts of recovery. So I wonder if that's also another issue for you guys. Mary says she's been dizzy and off balance, just has to rest. That is sometimes what you need to do. I definitely can relate to feeling dizzy or to feeling off balance, especially to off balance. The dizziness makes me a little worried, and I would want you to go talk to a doctor if this is an ongoing issue for you. I would suggest it. I'm not telling you what to do. Naz says, I saw you go live and I see the words brain fog, and I felt relief. Yeah, because it helps to not know that you're alone, right? I have found that huge relief in just knowing that I wasn't alone and knowing that I wasn't crazy and I wasn't the only one, right? So, okay, let's see. So Annette says, I know what you mean. Mystique, hey Mystique, I'm looking at the wrong camera again. Hey Mystique. Mystique says, after 20 years, I was in a crazy fog, fear, obligation, and guilt. And that's another one we should talk about. And dissociation was huge. So really, that's what this is, right? This is the dissociation is what this really is a lot of the time. We kind of, okay, look, so when I started going through this narcissistic abuse recovery stuff, one of the things that I realized is I had messed up a little bit, because in doing what I would later learn was gray rock, but what I called going to my happy place when I was going through this, I actually caused myself to start to dissociate because the BS became so often, the attacks became so frequent that I almost lived in that happy place where I just kind of numbed out. And it was better to me at the time than actually feeling the feelings. I realized it hurt less if I just spaced out and zoned out, I used to call it. So that certainly led to increased dissociation, which is why I think you have to be really careful when you do the gray rock method. And that's why I say that it's not something you can live with forever. It's a temporary solution, not a permanent one. But the fog, the fear, obligation, and guilt that Mystique mentions, this is, I think, what you live in when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, and sometimes even after for a while, right? I had this, especially with my parental narcissist in the beginning, and also with my ex. So yeah, and that's literally what it sounds like. I mean, if you think about it, everything that you do in a situation like that is about not, dealing with your own fears, dealing with the feeling of obligation to the narcissist because they're a spouse or a parent or a family member or even a boss or whatever, or a friend. But the guilt that goes with that, if you choose to step away or if you choose not to do what they want, they'll either guilt trip you or they will I already said guilt trip, or you just feel guilty because you have this sense of obligation that they've pounded into you over the years, right? Quinn says, you just described the last 3 years of my life. Exactly. And this is what so many of us go through. Ellen says, yes, absolutely. Lori Ray, I'm so sorry that your back is hurting, but I'm glad to see you here. And I hope you can rest and relax a little bit. Bill says, muscle tension. Yes, this is definitely a thing. And the muscle tension of it all, that's something, especially when I'm highly stressed out, still today, if I'm really stressed out and I'm not sleeping enough, I'll notice my legs hurt, and it's that muscle tension. I'll know, okay, I have to stop. I have to take time to sleep now because my thighs and the front of my legs will feel just super tense. And the only thing I can do is lay down and go to sleep. So I get that. Hello, Mimi. Pamela is living that now. I get it. Hey, Huffle Mom, you are awesome. Don't even worry. I was late too. Thank you for being here and doing what you do. You too, Jack. Beverly says, I feel disconnected and yes, sadness, but mostly I feel nothing. I'm afraid to I'm afraid to fail. So I hesitate to make even the simplest decisions. This is another side effect of this stuff, right? The lack of making, the struggles to make decisions, in my personal opinion, comes from when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, especially one where it's just, it's a marriage or a partnership. But even when you're dealing with a parent as an adult and they live in their own house, you still get to that place where you feel like, well, can I make this choice without somebody having a problem with this choice? So you get in the habit of never, ever choosing for yourself, always checking with the narcissist. And so when you get away, it changes your ability. You lose your ability to make decisions comfortably. Yeah. And then the sadness and the disconnectedness, absolutely. And this is something that it doesn't just go away. You have to intentionally choose to reconnect. You have to intentionally choose to shift and pattern interrupt that whole thing, right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, hi, Nance. Ellen says, I'm totally going through it now. I bought milk 3 times last week and I forgot I had it already. Girl, I have bought the same outfit before more than once. In fact, I just got a shipment of little outfits. I like to try to wear different things for videos and stuff. And I just got some clothes in, and literally there are 2 of the exact same outfit in this this box. I don't even know how I did it. I do it all the time. So that's okay, because I give it to my youngest, who can also wear it. Yeah. Okay. And Amanda says, I forget to put the coffee in and you're just heating up water. That has happened to me even recently, like about 6 months ago. I think I did that one. It's not good. Let's see here. Annette forgets her routine. Yeah. The forgetting of the routine, that is another ongoing thing. And Nance says, I have total brain fog and dysregulation. And that's another, yeah, it's all, you see, this is one of those things that we go through almost consistently when we've been in any sort of relationship with a narcissist or a toxic person. Crystal Mountain says, hey, Crystal, this is definitely where I am at after a 30-year marriage to recover. Now, let's talk about that. I think the longer you spend in a relationship with one of these people, the more significantly this happens, right? And I think a 30-year marriage is going to probably leave you spinning. But I want to tell you, there is some hope, right? Because one of the simplest things you can do is, to pattern interrupt. And I've talked about this a bazillion times, I know. And if I'm annoying anybody, tell me and I'll eventually notice and stop. But the 30-year marriage factor, going into a pattern interrupt. So for 30 years, and probably a couple of years before that, right, where you met that person, you have been basically shaping your personality in such a way that you're not offending that person, or you're trying not to, right? And so you end up losing, like I lost the ability to even talk about myself, right? I still don't do that well with talking about myself, except for about stuff that, yeah, well, anyway, like in a conversation, I will always ask the other person to tell me their stuff. And if they ask me for my, what do you do for a living? What do you do for this? I keep it short and brief, and I just turn them right back on to them, because I don't really like to talk about myself, and it's a result of that kind of stuff. But going through the brain fog of it, the way that you, here I am babbling on and on, the way that I have found, like I said, pattern interrupts. So it could be something as simple as, going into the bathroom and brushing your teeth, or going into, standing up and shaking out your body, or going into the kitchen and making a cup of coffee, or going outside and walking around the block, or, combing your hair, anything like that, take a shower, anything that is different than what you usually do, because the pattern goes like this. Something stresses you out or upsets you, you go numb and fog out. At least that's what happens to me. Um, and if that happens, I can let that fog happen for a minute, or I can choose to change it. And when I choose to change it, I stand up and I move, or I say something to myself, an affirmation, anything that I can do to sort of shift out of that position, bring myself back into my body. Because in a way, I think the brain fog or the dysregulation or the all of that, it sort of leads you into a place where you're not really in your own body, if that makes sense. It takes you out of the moment, right? So you want to get back into the moment. Now, once you've done the pattern interrupt and you've shifted back into the moment and gotten your mind changed, well, let me back up. So you do the pattern interrupt, right? So you say to yourself, here's an affirmation, I'm changing my mind, or I'm standing up and moving. Let me tell you a story. So when somebody, if you've ever told a story that you've told 1,000 times, and you like, say you're at a party or something, you're telling a story, and then somebody comes up and interrupts your story. And then that part, you talk to that person walks away, and everybody goes, okay, where were we? And then you're supposed to continue your story. Well, a lot of times you don't even know what you were talking about, because in that moment that the person came up, like I said, you've told that story 1,000 times. So this is the pattern of the story, but then that person interrupted it. So now you don't know where you were in the story. You either have to start over or you just give up, right? Well, this is the same kind of thing with any other pattern interrupt. So when you are going into the brain fog or you're going into the numbness, you do something different than you usually do. Usually you just let it happen. It feels better, right? But maybe you want to stay in the moment so that you don't go into the brain fog. So now you do a pattern interrupt. Well, in that very short amount of time between the time that you have done the pattern interrupt and the time you fall back into a pattern, now you can make a choice. In that little window, you can give yourself another thing to focus on, or you can give yourself another direction. So what I used to do all the time, and I still do sometimes, is when I feel some kind of way about something, or I find myself slipping into a brain fog, I go, nope, I now cancel that thought and I replace it with this affirmation of my true divine desire. And then I think of something that is something I actually want, whether it's related to what I'm thinking about, stressing about, or not. And I switch topics in my brain. And therefore, as I go forward. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. I know it was a lot of rambling, but I hope that helps someone. Pamela says, I have no motivation to participate in anything. Now this, I get it, right? I still struggle on certain days with this one because, even like doing live streams, which I'm not complaining, but even doing live streams every now and then, I'm just like, I just don't want to. It's not because I don't love you guys. It's just because sometimes it feels like a lot of work. It's not a lot of work. I'm sitting here talking, but it's just the idea of doing something that I don't, necessarily, I don't know if I'm in the wrong mood, you know what I mean? Or like my kids will be like, let's go for a walk. Let's do this. Sometimes I don't feel like it. Sometimes I make myself do it anyway. But the motivation to participate for me, I think it came from being so overwhelmed by the narcissist's requirements for my attention. Because what I would do is when this person was not in my face, I would be just like, okay, I can't do anything right now. I just have to sit and do nothing because I would be exhausted, mentally and emotionally exhausted. And so I got into a bad habit of when that person wasn't around me, I didn't want to do stuff because when they were around me, every bit of my attention was sucked away. And my energy. And so I had none left. And so then I found when I went away from that person, I left that person, I went through a few years where every weekend I would just lock my doors and not go outside. I would stay home. And that was not great, but it's what I did. It's how I got through. So now I would do it differently. Now that I understand what I do, I would have tried to pattern interrupt myself and do something different. And so Pamela, to you, I would say one thing that can be really, really useful is the one thing theory. And this is really what helped me get through this part. And that is where I'll tell myself, well, look, I have this whole room to clean, but I don't want to do it. I'm lazy and tired and whatever. So instead, I'm going to just only look at this one surface. Like I'm looking over here right now, the top of my buffet table. I'm sitting in my dining room. Top of my buffet table could use a little tidying, right? So I would tell myself, well, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to clean that top of that buffet table. And then I'm going to be done if I want to. I don't have to do anything else. I'm just going to do that one thing. And when I did the one thing, sometimes I would stop, but not usually. Usually I'd think, well, while I'm at it, I might as well just clean up this other thing here or sweep the floor or whatever. But I would give myself permission to stop, and I would if I wanted to. Does that make sense? I hope that's a little helpful. Joey says, wow, I had no idea that this was a byproduct of the abuse. It makes sense. I still have occasional moments. Right. And this is the thing about C-PTSD that's really terrible, is that it never fully goes away. You learn how to deal with it and cope with it, right? You can certainly get to a place where you don't feel like you have it. But I think, just like with drug and alcohol recovery, I think recovery from a toxic relationship is something that on some level we have to be mindful of forever. And I don't mean to say you can't be happy. I don't mean to say you can't move on in a healthier thing, but especially when it started in childhood, this is something that you've had to deal with for your whole life in different iterations. And so it becomes, it's like I said, a mindful, intentional change. And when you can do that and you can admit, you know what, I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes. I'm a human. It's okay. But also to become totally and completely okay with those mistakes, to not tell yourself over and over again, okay, I'm not able to do this, or I'm not able to whatever. You don't end up with the same feeling of being stuck. That's what I always felt. I felt like I was stuck. But now I tell myself, okay, I'm allowed to make mistakes. I don't have to be perfect. It's okay that my hair's a little messy today, or it's okay that, my camera's making me look terrible because I'm using the one on the computer instead of the other one that's now apparently I need to replace. You see what I'm saying? So we don't have to be. I always felt the need to be perfect because of what I grew up with and because of what I ended up with marrying. And we don't have to be perfect. And when we can get to that point where we're not only okay with being imperfect, but we're actually like almost embracing that, like, yeah, I have flaws and I'm okay with them. In fact, I'm cool with it, whatever those are. Now, there are certain things about ourselves that we will want to change, and there are certain things that we will change. But there are other things that we might want to change, but we might not be willing to do whatever is necessary to change. And so that's why I am very pro complete radical self-acceptance, unconditional self-love. I think it's really important to let go of all of that, those preconceived notions and those voices that tell you you're not good enough, that are, by the way, generally not your own voice in your head. It's some form of the narcissist or some abuser in your life that seems to do that. So yes. Okay. Changing My Life says, I had trauma as a child. I got in a life-threatening accident. I was unconscious for weeks. Oh my goodness. I woke up feeling like I was in a bubble. That bubble never truly left, and the X made it worse. Now, this is interesting. First of all, I would be very interested in hearing that story one day. Secondly, I think that could be an indication of possible, it almost has to be a traumatic brain injury, right? So that is an interesting, and then you ended up with a narcissist, which leaves you in such a, that being in a toxic relationship, we understand, based on research, and I'm not a doctor, let me just clarify that, but but I've had it confirmed by a doctor who I work with, that it literally causes a type of brain damage, right? And so that combined with what you went through previously, it makes it feel almost impossible to get out of, and they can definitely mess with your head. Hi, John. John says, I started watching you around Christmas. I was not even aware there was an entire community, and name what I go through. Thank you. Your educational videos truly helps. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And this is why I do what I do. Let's see. Sama, hello. Sama says, yeah, it's been 6 years. Stephanie says 33 years. Okay, Jillian. Oh, there it went. It happens all the time. The chat. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. So, Dynamite Dill says tapping is very helpful. I love that. Okay, so we're going to go through some of these answers that you guys gave me to my question about what kinds of things help you get through it, right? So I kind of talked about the mindfulness for me and this unconditional self-acceptance for me. Those things have been helpful. Jess, we are here with you. Don't give up on yourself. Jess says it's bad today. I need your help. I can't let him go. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But really quickly, Jess, let me just say this. I feel you. You're not alone. And remember that trauma bonding is real. So in a way, because of the trauma bond, you're missing him, even though you might logically know that he's bad for you. It's almost like, I don't know how familiar you are with trauma bonding, but it's similar to Stockholm syndrome, where you sort of develop an emotional attachment to your abuser. But I find that for me, not being able to let them go was more related to the person I thought I was getting instead of the person I got. Maybe that would be helpful. But we'll come back and talk about that more if you have interest, if you let me know in the chat. Retrofuturism says, do you think brain fog links to ADHD? Yes, I do. I think that the ADHD, even though I know that in some cases that it is the result of not the result of trauma, it's something else. I think a lot of times ADHD and trauma are connected. I've actually talked about it in past videos and done a lot of research on it, and I definitely believe I have a big whole post about it on my website. I believe that they're connected. Yes, I do. Hello, Celeste. Let's see here. Annette says 6 years. Okay. All right. Lori says, I talked to my ex-alcoholic husband, my ex-husband, the alcoholic father of my kids. It's been 21 years. My body broke down after I realized he never still changed. It hurts my soul. That is a devastating thing. And I totally relate to that as well. Yes. Okay. Now Stephanie says, when I bind, I stop and breathe. Oh, when in a bind, I stop and breathe. Yeah, that's helpful. It's very, very helpful. Stopping and taking deep breaths. And what that is about focusing on something other than whatever's driving you to feel that way. Nicole says, yes, it's those seeds of doubt that are planted. Makes you look like at each task, like it's going to be so difficult, just like everything with a narcissist. And that is very insightful because it's true. With my ex, I remember like literally nothing could be simple. If we were just trying to walk out the door to go somewhere, there had to be 75 little conversations about everything. It couldn't just end like, let's just go. But no, we have to talk about this and that. And it was just overwhelming and had to be a lot of arguments and etc. So Jacqueline says, I'm just getting to this chat right now, or sorry, this live video, but mindfulness definitely helped me a lot. Yes, mindfulness is a good thing. John says, my doctor, not knowing my personal relationship, put me on Adderall thinking I'm ADD. Did it help you, John, or not? And that is interesting that you mentioned that because, like I said, I do believe they're connected. Let's see. Nance says, I've isolated myself to the point of not wanting to be around people. I feel as if I'm hard to be around. Now, see, this is very interesting because I did the same thing and I'm not totally isolated, but I definitely have a very tiny inner circle and I am far less likely to want to be in large groups of people. And I also I feel concerned that I'm annoying and that people don't like to be around me, which I've never heard that from anyone except narcissists. But the thing is, I got to the point where I started to set boundaries, and I feel really strongly that the tighter, smaller inner circle outweighs the larger, less friendly inner circle, less dependable inner circle. So with that being said, if you are feeling overly isolated, I think it's a good idea to try to do something to get out there a little bit. But on the same note, if you feel comfortable with being isolated, that's fine, but don't do it to your own detriment, right? So like personally, we've talked about this before. Personally, I always want to I need at least an hour a day where I don't have any people around me and I don't have anyone who needs me in that hour, right? So I need an hour a day alone doing nothing. Lately, I've been taking that time in the evening. I'll go and sit in my room and kind of journal or whatever I want to do for an hour before I go to sleep. And that's really helpful. But it used to be sometimes early in the morning when my kids were small because they needed me to wake up and be with them when they were younger. Thank goodness they're not small anymore. Woo. Anyway, but that was the thing. Dynamite Dill says tapping is very helpful. Yes. So I did a video a while back with Brad. I can't remember. I want to say his last name is Yates. He's the tapping guy. He's really good. And in the video, he showed a few We did a few exercises in that video, which would be designed for survivors. So you should check that out if you're interested. Stephanie says, I stay busy. I see that one in a lot of people. Stephanie, I have to wonder if you're a Virgo. It's a silly question. But I see that in people. I worry about some people because I think they stay too busy and they don't give themselves any downtime. I find myself staying really busy with work stuff. But I have to very often slow myself down, which is why you'll see, I sort of go back and forth with being consistent on video sometimes because I become overwhelmed and I have to give myself a break. It's, you just do what you have to do. You have to take care of yourself. And sometimes for me, that means not doing a video one day or whatever. UNA says, mindfulness exercises can often be like hitting a reset button. Absolutely. Absolutely, they can. I love mindfulness exercises for that very reason. I love a good reset button. Hope says, sometimes I have dissociation, like my personal items are not mine. Yeah, I've seen that. Oh my gosh, Ellen, thank you so much. Ellen said, making a new schedule, taking time for me every day, and remembering progress, not perfection, is my goal every day. Thank you for the super chat, Ellen. And that is so valuable. I love the schedule thing. Like I said, sometimes I have to kind of give myself a break from the schedule, but I certainly feel like a comfortable schedule is really important, right? Taking time for me every day. I was just talking about that. I take an hour a day for myself for the same reason. Remembering progress, not perfection. You know what? That's the thing. Okay, two things. First of all, progress, not perfection. The first time I ever heard that term was I was reading a book by Joel Saltzman when I was in college, a book on writing. I loved it. And that stuck with me because as someone who went through this type of stuff growing up, I already had it in my head that I was just never going to be enough, right? And so that was difficult. But then on top of that, then when I was pregnant with my second son, progress, not perfection, I found the Fly Lady because I was, of course, very cluttery and I was trying to fix that. If anybody knows about flylady.net, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you should check it out. If you struggle with clutter, flylady.net. It's just a really great system and it's really nurturing for people maybe who didn't have great family lives growing up. She feels kind of motherly, right? Anyway, her thing was housework done incorrectly still blesses my family. It still sticks in my head today. And that kid is 17 right now, the one that I was pregnant with when I found her. But I still tell myself that all the time. Like, oh, I only have time to do the dishes. I don't have time to wipe down all the counters right now, or I don't have time to, do all this extra stuff that I would normally have to do to make it perfect. But I do have time to do this one thing. Well, there was a time in my life when I wouldn't do the one thing because I couldn't do all the things. And so now I tell myself that. I say, the housework done incorrectly still blesses my family. It's a silly thing to say, but it's really something that I say to myself all the time. So yes, I love those things, Ellen. Thank you so much. Yes. Let's see here. Hufflemom says, I think I may have gone through brain fog. It usually happened when I was meeting someone new in an office. My ears would start tingling, then I'd feel distant from the person. I don't know about the ears tingling, but that is certainly a possibility as part of it. But for me, the feeling distant from the person is real. I've often said I felt like I was not really there, or I was like watching from behind myself, or like I was in a movie. I felt unreal in some way, like it just wasn't really happening. It's hard to explain, like I was in a dream maybe. But yes, I think that sounds like some brain fog to me. Yes. And of course, Hufflemon, with you having ADHD as well, which I happen to know from talking with you before, that is something that will, I think brain fog also is exacerbated by that. But again, I think they're all connected. I do. I see a lot of people tend to be, survivors seem to be diagnosed with either ADHD. Sometimes I see BPD or I see bipolar being diagnosed in survivors. And personally, I think a lot of those things should really just be called C-PTSD, but that's not something that most people get diagnosed with. Let's see. Ellen says, taking time. Oh yeah, I read that. Thank you. Taking time for myself. Yes, it's a great start. Nance says, I've been better. Yeah. Hey, what's for tea? It's good to see you. What's for Tea says, still suffering from C-PTSD flashbacks, off and on in the tailspin from a trigger on Thursday, trying different combos of coping tools. Okay, this is really good. I was, I just mentioned this. I haven't put it on YouTube, but I mentioned it on a TikTok video just last week or yesterday or something. How I had been struggling with, I was triggered yesterday. I guess it was yesterday that I made the video. I was triggered yesterday by one of the people that works for me speaking to me in a tone, not even speaking, typing to me in a tone that felt like authoritative or like bossy, or like maybe I think it was because my mother would speak to me in certain ways, even as an adult. And I felt instantly so angry that I got dizzy and my heart pounded for 2 hours. And I had to just tell this person, look, I'm not struggling right now. I'm going to need a minute, because I couldn't even understand why I would be so angry. I didn't like what the person said because it was a little bit, maybe it wasn't rude. It felt rude to me. And I felt instantly angry. Like I said, and I don't get angry like this. I don't even remember the last time this happened to me where I felt so mad I was dizzy. But it's, I went into fight or flight mode, and I was in fight mode, y'all. But I didn't do it, because that's the thing. It's about when you recognize a trigger, you have to recognize that the person who triggered you probably didn't mean to trigger you, if it's not your abuser or someone who's, an abusive person, and that they were just trying to be a person and have a conversation. But yeah, I can relate. Yeah. And as far as, the flashbacks and the feeling of being stuck and all of that stuff, it's an ongoing battle. It really is. Yeah. Okay. Heather says, how do I get my second husband to understand because of the C-PTSD from my first marriage? Do we have more of that question? Heather, if you're already remarried and you're sure that you're not dealing with a toxic person, then I would suggest just explaining, maybe even showing him videos or something, but explaining to him that, what you went through and why you feel triggered sometimes. And I guess I need to know specifically what he is struggling with, what part of you or what actions or behaviors he's struggling with. That would give me a better way to describe to you what to do. But in this case, I would say, in general, fill them in on the information. Some people aren't going to handle it well. They're not going to understand what you're going through. So, oops. So that's something to think about too. Okay, bear with me one second here. Okay. Okay. Jack says, I've done a bit of it. What is it? What is it that Dill said? I'm not sure. I'll have to come back to that. Oh, here we go, from Heather. Oh no, we already did that one. Okay. Sorry. Hello, Monique. Jillian says, Angie, I've used your four corners thing to get out of the brain fog and grounding exercises. 4 things you see, 3 things you feel, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste, etc. Really good. Really good. The 4 corners thing she's talking about is when you look at the 4 corners of like a screen and you follow them clockwise for 2 minutes. You can do it with a screen, with a phone, with a window, with a door, any 4-sided object. It works wonders. It helps you get to the point where you literally, it just clears your head. It clears your head and it slows you down. I like the 4 things you see, 3 things you feel, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste thing. Another thing people do is they choose colors. Like they might say, well, let me see all the red things in the room, and they'll count them. Let me see all the purple things, whatever. It can really help you to kind of bring yourself back into the moment really quickly. So, and then let's see. Thank you, Jillian. That was a good reminder. I appreciate you. Nicole says, I stopped looking at the whole thing at once. Everything had to be converted into steps with a visual in my mind and emotions, a great outcome. Oh, that is excellent, excellent stuff. So if it's a clutter issue, I think what you're saying is, instead of looking at like you look at the whole room, you would look just at the buffet table, or you look just at the whatever, one thing you have to clean up. And that's kind of what I was saying with the one thing, right? It's kind of an ongoing thing. So yes, good reminder. Thank you. Aurora says, in the evenings, it's harder for me to hide my brain fog from others. I sing because it helps me transmute the negative things I endured. I love that. And I do that. I mean, I'm not a good singer, but I sing too. And I have different playlists for different purposes. And so I'll tell the Alexa back there, I will tell it, play this playlist, play that playlist. And it really helps. I have like one for the morning, and because I like a happy one in the morning. I have one for when I'm sad. I have different ones for different reasons. And certainly I will sing my little heart out. It's terrible, but people don't mind. And if they do, I guess they shouldn't live in my house because they don't care. Anyway, oh, my other favorite thing to do is if I'm in the car, I like to just do a front seat concert. It annoys my kids a little bit, but they've learned. They deal. They used to sing with me, not as much anymore. All right. Lorian says, I forget that I know how to do basic things. Oh, what we were talking about earlier. Okay. I forget that I know how to do basic things, like that I know how to attach a file to an email or what HTML is. Okay. Or just a web address. Then I started having panic attacks because let's see. Well, we'll come back to that. The panic. Oh, because okay, I don't see the rest of that yet, but I get it. And that is something I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that's very, very common. I do. I think I've done that. I've had those moments too. And I think, am I crazy? I've done this 1,000 times. Oh, it drives me crazy. So in things like this, I start writing stuff down, right? I start writing down whatever it is that I'm dealing with, whatever, I have a bullet journal. I think a lot of you guys know that. I would grab it, but it's across the other side of the room right now. But where I just write down all the things that I don't want to forget. And I have different ways of, indexes. It's indexed. If anybody knows about bullet journaling, it's a godsend for people like us. But yes, things like that. I mean, it almost requires you to kind of do a pattern interrupt in the moment so you can bring yourself back to where you were and figure that out, right? Panic attacks, again, a pattern interrupt is for me the best thing. Again, I think you should talk to your doctor if this is an ongoing thing and if it's really stopping your life. You should make sure everything else is okay and then try pattern interrupts. They're different depending on what state you're in. There are certain things you can do for that, and I would never recommend medication or anything, but if your doctor thinks it's a good idea and you think it's a good idea, it might be a good idea for temporary purposes. I know that when I left my ex, I was on Prozac for about 6 months, and it was great until it wasn't. When I got to the part where it started to make me feel completely numb, then I talked to the doctor and they weaned me off of it because it was no longer necessary for me. It just kind of got me over the hump at the time. So yes, excuse me. Stephanie says, I feel sorry for my adult brother. He's trapped and dealing with the monster mama. Now, I get that. They definitely, but just remember that if he's an adult and he's capable of, making his own money and dealing with his own life, then he's not really that trapped. If he is not capable of those things, I mean, he's trapped by her emotions and her fog, fear, obligation, guilt thing. But if he's like disabled or something, that's a whole other story. And there are a lot of things you have to think about in that case. So let me know your thoughts. I'm not sure what else to say about that right now, but I do understand that feeling. Yeah. But I also know that we all make our own choices, and you can't spend your life feeling sorry for someone who has made the choice to continue that relationship, right? Yeah. Okay, Sarah, hi Sarah, says, I have horrible brain fog that is similar to ADHD. I can't focus to save my life. Housework never gets completely done. I bounce from one task to the next. My motivation has left the building. I can so deeply relate to this. And what I find is that when I'm doing well, I don't have any issues with this. But if something is difficult in life, if I'm going through a big change, some life thing is happening, I certainly kind of slip. That's where I go when I feel anxious and stressed about anything. I go to brain fog almost instantly. I go to lack of motivation. That's my version of depression, I guess. But it's not just depression, it's the brain. I don't really get sad. I just get numb. And I think, again, that's a coping tactic developed during abuse that I could unfortunately continue to hold on to. It's useless, it's annoying and frustrating, but I guess it felt better to me than being sad, because I spent a lot of time being sad and anxious. And so numb was better for me. And I don't know how many of you can relate to that. Yeah. Okay. Now, Annette says, sometimes I sleep the whole day. Now, this is something I don't do, but I know Dana does this. If Dana's stressed out, Dana sleeps. I wish I slept when I was stressed out. I just stay awake and never sleep if I'm stressed out. So everybody's got a different, but sleep disturbances is a thing, whether you're sleeping too much or not sleeping enough. It's a part of what a lot of us go through with C-PTSD. So, yeah, I also sometimes struggle with eating the wrong things. As you can see, my face today is really puffy. Sorry about the noise. My face is a little puffy today, and that's because yesterday I ate some things I shouldn't have eaten. And I noticed that it's almost an instant effect where I get puffy and gross because I have apparently developed food allergies in my old age. One more thing. All right, moving right along. Amanda says, mine is to where I feel like I'm watching my life from the front porch when I'm actually in it. Yes, I get that. I'm not there. I'm just watching it. I smoke, which is, yeah. So the CBD thing, I cannot talk about that on YouTube or the other thing, but I'll tell you this. I understand it's not a bad thing. And I know CBD is legal everywhere. The other part of the plant may not be legal everywhere, but I'm sure it's on its way to being legal everywhere. So if I were to recommend, which I would not recommend anything ever, but it is something that comes from the earth as opposed to a pharmaceutical company. That's all I'm going to say. All right. All right. You're having a really hard time, Jack. I'm trying to see what Nance said. Where's that at? This chat is driving. It's not great for me. I can't see it all very well. Okay. Nance said, wait a minute. Hold on, I just saw something. Nance said, does anyone use somatic experiencing to help? My sister and I are looking into that. I'm not 100% sure about that one. I will have to look it up. I've heard about different versions of therapy that are similar to that. I've heard about people using sort of, what's it called? It's like a type of aversion therapy where you kind of force yourself to be in the thing. Somatic experiencing, I'm not totally sure what that is. I'll have to look it up and learn about that. I don't know that one. But I'm interested in knowing if anyone else does. Nance, do you have any? Can you fill us in a little bit while we're here? Sarah Williams says, I hate leaving the house. Yeah, I went through that too. And sometimes I still have those moments where I feel like that. Leaving the house can feel, yeah, you might have ADHD, Sarah. I'm not telling you about your diagnosis. You should talk to your own doctor about that, of course. But I certainly, I see a lot of survivors with ADHD or some version of that. Yeah, it's really helpful to get it checked out and to just find out what the doctor thinks you have going on. My doctor sent me to a psychiatrist who, did the testing with me. And, my doctor did an initial test and then sent me to a psychiatrist to be diagnosed. And then the psychiatrist recommended medicine. I don't take all the medicine he recommended because some of them, there was more than one, and I thought that was ridiculous and unnecessary. I'm not trying to be overly medicated. So, but I did have the diagnosis, and that was helpful for moving forward from there with my treatment and so on and so forth. So, but hating to leave the house is something I can relate to. It's something that I think a lot of us can relate to. Some people even go so far as to develop a sort of social anxiety or agoraphobia. I have my days with social anxiety. I've never had full-on agoraphobia, but I've had a lot of social anxiety over the years. I do mostly okay today, but if I'm meeting new people and I don't feel like I'm properly presentable, I have a hard time. I'm getting better. I've even left the house without makeup a few times recently. So that's something. Okay, let's see here. What's for Tea says, I have trouble doing one of my jobs. The other job is a no-brainer office cleaning by myself. Okay, so I've seen this, and I've also seen people who struggle like in office jobs. They will be, they'll be doing fine as long as they don't have to work next to somebody else. But if they are in a situation where they have to see people, or people are constantly walking by their cube if they're in a cube, or um, people are in their face too much, then the same people who do really well when they're alone in their little cube or in their little office will struggle. And so that could be part of it. Feeling distracted. I don't know what your job is and exactly what the trouble is, but I'm guessing it's related to focus, the trouble. And that's has been my personal problem, which is one of the reasons that I love so much what I do, is because I can kind of hop around from thing to thing, different types of content, writing one day, video one day, whatever, short video, long video. It's helpful to be able to bump around with ADHD. I feel like I need to be able to focus on whatever I want to focus on, which sounds so silly and selfish, but it's really the most effective thing. And so that's why doing something like what I do, where you have all these little different, like, sort of pots to put your work in, it helps. And as you can see, I'm holding my quietest fidget toy right here. And that helps me stay focused as well on things. If I have some kind of a fidget toy in my hand or in front of me, which I've gotten some really cool ones recently, I'm very psyched about. But anyway, those things help me. And I feel silly doing it, so I buy the ones that look like grown-up toys. They're silver and stuff. instead of the ones that look like kids' toys. I don't know. It helps me feel less child. Speaking of aged aggression, to Sama, I don't really feel that one for myself as much, except for, again, with fidget toys. But I'm one of those people who, like, when I was 7, I wanted to be a grown-up. That was my whole goal in my life. I wanted to hurry up and grow up. When I played games as a kid, I played let's play grown-up. I wanted to be grown up, and that's silly, but that's where I was. So I never really felt like I got a whole big childhood situation. Now, some people will, but I think there's a part of me that kind of feels that way. I did a lot of inner child work when I was going through the early parts of my recovery, and that has been significantly helpful for me in that way. Even recognizing myself as an adult took some time at first, but I'm okay now with that stuff. I think maybe inner child work can be helpful for people who go through the aged aggression thing. And again, always, I need to just reiterate, talk to your doctor if it's something that's affecting your life in a negative way. Amanda says also the things that to me are basic: lighting. I think she means logic. Oh wait, lighting and scents or a candle. Okay, so basic lighting, the scent of a candle, taking a hot bath. These are all things that you suggest. Yeah. Taking care of your physical well-being, even though, yeah. And I think that's really, really important, Amanda. And I have personally found that to also be really helpful. I like to decorate my space in certain ways that make me feel okay. I have a little whimsical side with the decoration, so I guess there's a little bit of aged aggression there. Like my personal room is all done in pinks and lots of florals and soft fabrics. And I had no idea that the soft fabric thing the need to be surrounded in soft fabrics might be a neurodivergent thing. I just recently learned that. So yeah, the term neurotypical has only been really popular in the past, in the mainstream in the past few years. And the more, the less neurotypical I realize I am, or the less neurotypical that I realize I am, the more I start to wonder. Yeah. Yeah. And Jack says he's getting good results with that particular type of oil that we mentioned earlier. One of our fellow YouTubers lost an entire channel for talking about that oil, so I'm not going to talk about it, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay. UNA, yeah, what is this sleep thing of which you speak, right, Peggy? Okay. That's me. I'm a non-sleeper. I struggle with sleep. I'm happy if I can get, I'm doing better now. I like to get 6 to 8 hours a night if I'm lucky now, but that's rare. But my goal is at least 6 hours. I don't like the way I feel when I don't sleep regularly. So I try to do, sometimes it's only 5 hours, but I keep telling myself Albert Einstein only slept 3 hours a night, but I'm not Albert Einstein. So I need a little more sleep than that. But yeah, it's important. Jess says a bipolar narcissist is pretty bad. I would agree with that. Amanda says sometimes it's hard to do that, but I'm at a point where I can force myself to listen to a song to set me out of it. Yes, this is why I say playlists. I have probably too many different types of music services because for different reasons, I probably just need to cut down to one, but I've got all different whatever, different songs, different playlists on different sites. But yeah, self-soothing through sensory experiences. Yes, Jack. Lorian says panic attacks, and I feel incapable of handling basic life details. Yes, this is something I have also gone through, and this is something, the basic life details, like I have this tendency still today to sometimes put things off until the last minute. For example, taxes, I did not do them until the very last minute. And then when I found out, oh, I have an extra month, yes, please. I waited a month because that's, certain things stress me out. I don't like to do them. They feel hard. And so I wait until the last minute until I have to do them. Now, there was a time in my life when I maybe wouldn't have done them, but there are certain things I feel like I'm obligated to do. But yeah, I definitely feel that kind of way. So yes. Lori, I'm so glad, Lori. Lori says she really needed to be here. I feel much safer now. I am very grateful to hear that, and it helps me know that I made the right choice to be here today. So thank you for that. Annette says, house is a mess. Can relate, been there. Yeah, Nicole Angelina says, when we're talking about the feeling overwhelmed by things, don't look at the whole kitchen, just focus on the plates. If that's all you can do, celebrate because you're doing it in steps and you'll get to your blessed outcome. Yes, that's right. You're always so good with this type of stuff. This is actually true. And this is something that we all have to give ourselves a little grace on. You know what I mean? Just because we're not perfect doesn't mean we still can't be good enough, right? Nobody's perfect. I mean, somebody might be perfect with keeping their house perfect all the time, but then what else, what else are they not doing that you're doing? You know what I mean? Maybe they're not reading, or they're not doing any sort of self-development or personal growth. It's just an ongoing thing. You know what I mean? There's all different levels, and different things are important to different people. And so if a perfect house is not important to you, but a house that you can walk through and that doesn't smell bad is important to you, you see what I'm saying? I really struggle with people, the smell thing. I have to have a clean smelling location. Anyway, okay. Okay. Yes. Jack, you should tell us briefly. I don't know if it will let you put in the chat about the video, but I am interested in knowing about the self-soothing box, and I think everyone else might be as well. So if you want to share a couple of items, I don't have a self-soothing box, but like I said, I have a lot of fidget toys in every area that I sit in the house, whether it's in my bedroom or my office or my dining room. Fidget toys, they help me. And I guess that's a similar thing. Emily says, one thing that helped me was being honest with myself and not quiet about my emotions going through it. This is powerful. Okay, absolutely true. So that's important because I did that. I think what you're saying is that you previously may have shoved your emotions down and not felt them because it was easier. That's what I did during the abuse and sometimes after. But when I got to that place where I could start to recognize my emotions and own them and then work through them, I was so much better. That's one of the biggest reasons for brain fog, I think, is because it's your brain trying to protect yourself from your own emotions. And again, I think for me, I felt I slipped into it accidentally on some level by trying to gray rock without knowing what I was doing. I didn't know what gray rock was. I just knew that I didn't want to feel the pain I was feeling. And so therefore I would just go somewhere else in my head. And that's how it went. So, okay. Yeah. And Peggy says, and spending time in her happy place. Yeah. Yeah. Annette says, my house, everything is a mess. Well, Annette, do yourself a favor. Just take 1 minute or 5 minutes a day and pick one thing and just tidy it up. When I did that 30-day declutter challenge back when I did that, I didn't think it would be that great. But I actually my house wasn't even that bad, but I significantly improved it because I just made a small effort every day. Literally, like I think I did 15 minutes a day, and it was really not difficult. It was just a matter of making the intentional effort. And it will feel like it's not a big deal when you start in the first week. You'll be like, well, okay, so I did 5 little things, whatever, but just try it. And somewhere, I don't have the link on me right now, but I'll find it, or you can just Google it or go to Queen Bee and look for it. But there is a free 30-day declutter challenge still up there, and that might help a lot as well. And like I said, check out that Fly Lady stuff. Her stuff is even better. Because I'm not an expert in this stuff. I'm just someone who struggles with it. She also struggled with it, but she's been doing this for years. Like I said, I found her when I was pregnant with my now 17-year-old, and her stuff is great. It really changed my whole life. It's amazing stuff. So definitely check her out as well. Helpful. Wait a minute. Stephanie says, bipolar narcissist alcoholic raised me till abandoning me at 15 years old. Stephanie, I'm so sorry. I know that's painful. Huffle Mom says, going through what she went through as a child, so I felt like I'd come loose and I was watching from somewhere just above my head. I felt nothing of what was happening to me. And that's similar to what I experienced, and similar to what I think it started with me with the physical stuff as a kid, and it became my go-to, I think. Hi, chillin' with Byron. How are you, Byron? Yeah. Oh, okay. Clutter and hoarding. Okay. Yeah, that is tough stuff, Jack. I know it is. It's overwhelming. And I know for me personally, I really struggle with if my kids don't do their chores. It sounds so stupid, but one of my kids don't have very many chores. One of the chores that they have is to take out the trash. And so if the trash isn't taken out, I feel like I can't breathe. and and so it's a dumb thing. It's dumb. I feel overwhelmed by it. And so I have to remind myself that it's okay. And but what happens when you feel like that is that if you're not aware of why you feel like that and you don't do something to change it, then you can get stuck. And that's what I did for a long time. I got stuck in that mess and I couldn't function around it or near it. I would just go in the other room. I would just turn around and walk right out of the room. And now I do something more. I do something about it to try to make myself more comfortable, whether that's I pick up the trash and take it out myself and, or I call them down and have them do it or whatever it is. I deal with it. It's better. So yes. All right. Okay. Someone says they will punish you. Yes, the narcissist will punish you. They punish you for breathing the wrong way, if we're honest. And that's part of the reason that we all, I think, want to or have moved away from them in our lives. Personally, I've gone no contact with the toxic people in my life, thank goodness. But it's years later and I'm still occasionally having those little complications, but understanding what it is and knowing what you're dealing with, to me, is incredibly powerful. And this is why I talk about it all the time here and on my website. I mean, the website's a whole, much more organized version of the information that I do on YouTube, because I want people to understand, first of all, you're not alone and this is real. And a lot of people go through this. And I think I've told a lot of you, I recently partnered with a psychologist, Dr. Robin Bryman, who's amazing. And she has, basically endorsed the work that I've done up to this point. And that helps me a lot as well. And I would, she's amazing. So anyway, Rory says, how do you get out of the numbing phase? It's hard to get excited about things I used to enjoy doing. Okay, this I can relate to. This is mindfulness, okay? And you might, and this is going to sound funny, but you almost might have to fake it a little bit until you make it. So being aware, first of all, if you're still in the relationship with a toxic person, they're going to dampen your excitement about everything, every time, no matter what. And so one of the most important things you can do, I think, in that situation is to get away. But if you can't get away, then, but even if you can, mindfulness is going to take you to that next level. It's all about that. It's all about, figuring out exactly what they've done. I'm sorry, the numbing phase. Figuring out exactly why you're feeling that way. Figuring out what would happen. If you got excited with the narcissist, maybe they told you were yelling. That used to happen to me. Or maybe they would downplay your excitement or punish you for being excited, right? And in that case, it's hard to get excited about those things. So it helps to give yourself permission to feel happy and excited. It helps to bring yourself into the moment, like we've talked about with the mindfulness and different exercises we've mentioned today. And generally, I think it's permission. I really do. I think once you get yourself in the moment, it's about giving yourself permission to accept the feelings of being excited and happy. Because as Sama mentioned, and as I experienced myself, I would be punished on some level or minimized whenever I had something good that happened in my life. And I still struggle to be super excited about stuff sometimes. And I still have a tendency to minimize things. Like when I, got 100,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel, I thought I would be super excited and happy. And I was happy, but it didn't have the effect that I thought it would. And it's not about, it's just, it was a milestone thing. And it wasn't about being better than anyone else. It was about reaching a goal for myself, and reaching more people. But even when I got the little plaque in the mail, I have it upstairs in my office, but I never look at it, and I don't show it to anyone. I put it on Facebook the first time I got it, and I have never. Anyway, doesn't matter. The point is, it's easy to not celebrate yourself, and so maybe something we can all do this week. Here's our assignment for the week, everybody. Let's all think of something about ourselves this week that we can celebrate. If you don't think of it today, that's okay. Bring it to our next chat. But if you think of it right now, tell me something in the chat that you can celebrate about yourself today. I think that's important. Okay. I am out of time, you guys, but I want to read this one more comment from Crystal. Hi, JC, by the way. Crystal says, I recently had people point out that my mother's a narcissist. All of your videos sound just like her. I have brain fog and I've been trapped here for a decade. She's taken everything. And this is what they do. I assume that you're in the relationship, that you're still living with her, or that you've moved back in with her, Crystal. You might be right. And the brain fog, yeah, it's, I don't know your situation. I don't know if you're able to work and save money and get out, or what your situation is, but I feel for you deeply. And if you want to share some of that, during our next stream, or in a session, or in the SPAN group on Facebook, or the myspanly.com site, let me know. If you are someone who doesn't do Facebook and you want to be on the myspanly.com site, please talk to Jack Lumen or Hufflemom, and they can help you out with that. Get you all figured out there. Yeah, Peggy, partly dissociation and partly the freeze response. Let me tell you something really quick. Okay, I know I'm over time, but let me just tell you this really quick. So the fight or flight thing, the freeze response, the dissociation, all of that stuff. Oh, hey, Shastina. It can be a significantly debilitating thing. I've seen so many people. I have one client, or previous client, who was so stuck in that freeze response. She literally she could barely stand to leave the house without feeling like she was going to die. And she went to work and she did her thing, but she could not socialize. She could not even imagine the idea of socializing. It was terrible. And it was, after digging into it, we realized she was constantly in, I thought it was fight or flight mode, but it wasn't. It was freeze. She was stuck in the freeze mode. She could not function socially at all. But her situation was incredibly traumatic. And I mean, beyond, I can't even talk about it. It's not my thing to tell, but it was a really bad situation that started as a child and went all the way until, a month or 3 before I met her. So it was, and she was in her 50s, I think. So yes, that's right, Peggy. Thank you. Chestina, it's good to see you. And the brain fog is, yep. Annette said she can't even get out of bed. Yeah, this is the thing. This happens to a lot of us. And it makes me so damn mad, because I think about the narcissists. They don't have any remorse. They don't have any, all they feel is, why aren't you still giving me supply? Why, how dare you take away my supply, or whatever. And that's really the only thing we can logically do is to remove supply if we're trying to not only heal ourselves, but also not help them anymore. But I think what it comes down to is brain fog is something we all deal with. It is something. JC says, Joy says, I had brain fog when I was with my ex. It makes me wonder if it affects the right side of the brain. Certainly. I mean, I think it affects both sides, though, because I'm a left-handed person. I'm a very creative person, and it's certainly negatively and positively affected my creative muscles in different ways. But for me, it was more about the functionality of actually doing anything with that creative energy. You know what I mean? Or sometimes I had none. It's an ongoing thing. All right. Guys, I want to keep talking. I really do, but I've got other people that are waiting on me at the moment. So I'm going to have to rush out of here. But just in case you are new around here, we do this every week. Normally, I have Dana Morningstar with me. She wasn't feeling well this week. So next week, assuming she's able to do this, we'll be back over on her channel, which is Thrive After Abuse, right here on YouTube. We alternate channels every week. We usually come on around 12:30 Central Time, sometimes a little later. This week we were a little late. She had canceled, and I wanted to check with Jack and Hufflemom, two of our admins, our mod squads, mod squad members. Thank you for being here, guys. To make sure they could make it, and they could. So we went ahead and went a little late today, and to make sure they were still cool with doing a solo stream, because they always are. But I still feel the need to ask. And I'm grateful for you guys. Anyway, okay. See, I just got all distracted. Okay, so if you want to make sure that you are able to come to these streams, which are normally slightly more organized than this, because Dane is a little better about staying on track than I am. This happens, like I said, every Tuesday, alternating channels. You can subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification to be notified. But as Jack's been telling me, it hasn't been notifying of all the videos. So you might also want to subscribe to you should do the same for Dana's channel, because like I said, we alternate. So she's Thrive After Abuse. Or you can text AngieLive, all one word, to 33222, and I'll text you about 5 to 15 minutes before I go live. Dana does the same thing. You can text Dana Live, all one word, to 22999. She will text you before we go live, or before she goes live by herself. It's a good idea to text to both numbers, just in case one of us goes live separately. She tends to do that a little more often than I do. She doesn't do a whole lot of videos. If you have video topics, and I mean standalone videos, not live streams. If you have video topics you want us to cover, you can share them here in the chat, ideally below, or send an email to us at, I think it's Livestream Tuesdays. Make sure that you look at, Joey, that's an interesting thing. We'll talk about that next time. Make sure that you look at Hufflemom's notes here. She'll give you all this information, and I'll let her do that because I don't want to say anything wrong. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to read one more comment because it's from Mystique and it's really helpful. Mystique said, I had to look at my life and accept the reality that everything I thought about my life was a lie. I had to truly trust myself and love myself for the first time in my life. And that right there is what it all comes down to. It's very difficult to accept narcissistic abuse because a lot of times we don't even know it's happening. And like for me, I was physically abused as a kid, and as an adult, I thought, well, I'm not being physically abused, so it's probably okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. We even talked about last week, we talked about that same thing. So yeah, very good. Thank you for sharing that. And Celeste said, yeah, dissociation got me through the worst times of life. I didn't have to do anything. It just happened. And it was like leaving my life to watch it in aerial view while it's on autoplay. Exactly. And one more. Yes, Nicole says, all you have to do is take a deep breath and start. So everybody, let's do it. Deep breath. Let's do this. We're starting. Okay. All right, everybody. I'll see you soon. Big hugs. Have a lovely Tuesday evening.